Hi, this is Henry Chamberlain. Welcome to Comics Grinder. I'm going to be discussing funny stuff with Phil Witte and Rex Hesner. They're the creators of this amazing guidebook to creating great cartoons, like the New Yorker cartoonists that we all know and love. I want to start off with you, Rex, and then we'll just alternate and go back and forth. Rex, tell me a little bit, a thumbnail as to what funny stuff's about.
Well, it's really an appreciation of the single panel cartoon, gag cartoon um, style, and it's really unique. We see all sorts of comics here and graphic novels there, but the single panel gag cartoon has been enduring for over 100 years plus, and we thought it was time to not only do an appreciation, but to do a dive into how the humor works. So, with that, Phil, you're probably next.
Yeah, and we also break down the various components of a cartoon, illustration styles, and how those work with the humor to elevate the humor. How cartoonists come up with ideas for these gags, and what they say about the cartoonists themselves. And this is based in part on our interviews with a lot of the best cartoonists in the business, folks like Raj Chast and Mick Stevens. We were one of the last people to interview Sam Gross, and all of them were very cooperative in helping us with the book. And we have over 100 cartoons by these great cartoonists. I should also mention the foreword is by the legendary Bob Mankoff, who was the cartoon editor at the New Yorker for 20 years, as well as a very well-known cartoonist in his own right. So we're quite proud of it, and the cartoonists who've been involved have already expressed their great appreciation for what we've done. So, and it's due out July 16th. That's the release date from Prometheus Books.
Well, perfect. Let me dive in and just show up the cover one more time, and then dive right into the book, and you guys can dissect it as I hope you will for some of these other ones as well. It's just a domestic scene. Looks very normal, but as we know from this book, the incongruity is everything. The actual caption, "Come on, let's have kids. Next week you can pick the restaurant." So can you just dive in, Phil, and tell me what's going on with this cartoon that makes it funny?
Well, I guess I can jump in here. This is an example of what we call, as you mentioned, Harold, is incongruity. So what we've got is we've got a couple in bed, wife and husband,
Yeah.
where it begins with a normal kind of conversation you might have in bed, but then takes this 180-degree turn in this completely opposite direction that you don't expect, and that's the incongruity part in a way that's surprising, that moves the gag. And we contrast with the cartoon by the same cartoonist, the great Joe Dater, where in the previous page, I think it is, we have visual incongruity,
Yeah.
where it's the same couple almost. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same kind of setting in bed with a bear in the bed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
Henry. This is a pop quiz. What's the incongruity in this one?
Well, I think it's the bear with the couple. Might be
Go to
mistaken.
the head of the class. Yes. Yeah, and we make
right.
it. We really try to make a distinction between visual incongruity, which you're looking at there, and then when you go back to the other cartoon, we'll talk a little bit about how verbal incongruity works.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Let me get back to visual incongruity. I had one that I really liked. This one with the dogs. There's absolutely a visual incongruity example, and then the caption is, "It's not enough that we succeed. Cats must also fail." which is really just.
Yeah, that's a dog lover's special.
And that and I was going to say, Henry, that's sort of in that category where we've talked about uh, anthropomorphism, where we attribute human attributes to animals or even to things. I mean, they're talking trees in cartoons. You'll see.
Yeah.
And well, not in animal. I guess trees are they're living things, but unliving rocks, whatever it could be.
And then we have the verbal incongruity, where it's where it's a somber scene. You wouldn't think anything funny could come from a bunch of doctors, and it's a very sobering scene. But then the caption reads, "This patient has a rare form of medical insurance."
Yeah, this is from one of our favorite cartoonists, Frank Cotham, and we've had the privilege of interviewing him, and he's a real Southern gentleman living
Oh,
in Memphis. And yet, as he himself has told us in his interview, he is a glass half empty kind of guy, and you see that in his illustration style. This is a dark, somber, as you point out, composition, and then there's just that little twist at the end of his caption that really sticks his whole gag.
well,
And you know that card. If I could interrupt that, I just
yeah.
add. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Henry.
No, but please, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, please continue.
Sorry. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah, I know.
But I was going to say, for that, you could pick any cartoon, and Rex and I could just go on about it. But I do want to point out that a cartoon also ties into a chapter we do about caption writing, and
Right.
that caption follows the rule of put the funny part at the end.
Right.
The punchline, the last side. So medical insurance, the last two words, are the caption that gives it the punch.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that some books of this kind, you just read the cartoons and then maybe you read a little bit, but this is so chock full of insight and information. And you have all these interviews, and they're not just interviews, because you weave the interviews in by taking the nuggets that really are specific to what you're talking about at the moment, and then you just weave that in, whatever it might be. I might have an example of that if I'm. Well, I just love this one. This is the Wordless cartoon, which is like the Holy Grail. You would argue it's probably the most difficult or challenging to get right. And this is deer crossings, but they're all subtly different. It's like an animation of deer crossings.
Flip cards.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, by the great John O'Brien, who's
Yeah.
who's I would say the vast majority of his cartoons are wordless. They have no caption, and they have that whimsical quality that you have to look at the cartoon to study it a little bit. It's not something you can just go bang and you get it. And it's worth perusing and just admiring the skill in which he does his work.
Well,
He's
looking
also
at
illustrated. He's an illustrator too. He just illustrated over 100 children's books. Sorry,
Yeah,
Rex.
he's got a timeless graphic style. They all look like they're from woodcuts. They're beautifully done, and they're brilliant cartoons. They have a whole story, backstory, and a punchline. So all without a single word. The degree of difficulty for that is very high.
Well, referring back to my notes, there were certain things I wanted to make sure to pass by you guys. Like, I was going to begin by saying, well, we're going to try to reveal some of the secrets to great cartooning. And in my observation, my big takeaway is that the best cartoonists, the ones that do it for the long haul. Oops, wait a minute. Who might this be?
Yeah.
Well, we have Phil Witt original. The ones that are really the best, they're not just selling a joke, they're selling a universe. So it's my world and welcome to it. What would you say to that, Phil, while we're enjoying your cartoon here with these two art critics trying to decide whether
Uh,
it's art or not art?
yeah, I won't claim to have a unique world, but I think good cartoonists do have a certain perspective and a point of view, and there's a line of humor that runs through it. If you look at a Roz Chast cartoon, it says a lot about her, as something Bob Mankoff has pointed out. Her world, it's this neurotic New York world. Other cartoonists maybe have less a broader perspective on things, but I think their vein of humor is recognizable. Some cartoonists more than others. So Bruce Eric Kaplan we talk about has a kind of a dark view. Ed Steed has this
very
one of our
cold.
favorites.
Yeah.
It is a very it's a disturbed look at the world, I guess you could say. And others have a more gentle view. I think Amy Huang is an example of a cartoonist who looks at the world in more of an observational way. So maybe that responds to your question.
And then here's an all-time classic, timeless. No one can doubt its beauty. Sal Steinberg. And
yes, and his, by the way, when we got the rights to the reprint this one, the I don't know, it's the agency or whatever that handles this was insisted that the estate of Saul Steinberg not refer to this as a cartoon. He did drawings, he did art, and he have a point, because even though his work appeared in the New Yorker, in the spots you would find cartoons, for years before that, his work was in museums, including Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah.
So they're kind of persnickety about how his work is referred to.
And this cartoon is a transition to the next chapter. But when you look at it, it's a masterclass in flattening perspective, into mashing two planes together to create something at the same time, which is also not only visually arresting, but it's funny.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to Bob Mankoff.
Yeah.
There's a piece right here. And I was looking at the blog that you guys do on Cartoon Stock, and I read the first one after you guys transitioned from your original blog, and it was people at bars. So this is very appropriate to show it, and it's one of Bob's comics with two guys at a bar, the bartender listening very thoughtfully to the client, and the caption is, "Hey Eddie, want to hear a joke that's offensive now and bad taste 2 years from now, funny in 8, and no one gets it in 20?" And that is really, I can hear Bob's voice in that.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand, Bob Mankoff is our godfather. He's the one, he brought us on to his Cartoon Stock site to do Anatomy of a Cartoon. And we certainly have had the privilege over the past few years of talking to him at least once a month. And these are wildly interesting conversations that you have to hold on by your fingernails to keep up with him. But he's the one, honestly, Henry, he's the one that turned to us in one of our calls and said, "Why don't you guys write a book?"
Oh, well, God bless him. I don't want to digress, but I have met him, and he's a force of nature, but he's also a lovable person too.
Yes. Oh yeah. We look forward to our calls with him.
And well, there's a couple of questions I wanted to make sure I asked you. There's that episode of Seinfeld where they lean in hard on the cliche or the misunderstanding that New Yorker cartoons are hard to get, and that might be what a lot of people think. Or do they? What's your take on it? Do you think the general public gets it, or does a lot of people out there just say, well, I'm not quite sure what's going on here?
Well, I've done an in-depth survey of this question. I've talked to at least 5 people. So I would say there's a range. And by that, I mean there are some cartoons that folks don't understand, and they are frustrating to the reader. So one of the things we hope that this book does is just provide some perspectives to look at these cartoons and to, we hope, unravel them. Uh, I do understand the frustration with some folks, but just read a little more.
Yeah.
As we point out, there are a lot of references here. These are cultural references that some people are familiar with and some people aren't. So um, it's like anything else. The New Yorker is a high-minded cartoon. I mean, a high-minded magazine, and its cartoons are as well.
Well,
Yeah, and
It's
sorry,
not
go ahead.
only some are high-minded, some just roll in the gutter, frankly. But anyway, there are plenty there that anybody should get. Phil, you're going
Oh,
to say.
yeah,
this one right here, I just need to share this one with folks. There's so many wonderful examples, but uh, this one is simple and yet it's so complex and elegant. The executive's holding a twig, and there's the dog who has this most incredible expression. He looks like every intern I've ever seen, nervous intern. And the caption is, "Hold on, this is a stick. I asked for the ball."
that's by the wonderful Michael Maslin, who you may know has a blog himself called Inkspill, which really focuses on New Yorker cartoonists, and he's been supportive of us as well. We appreciate what he's done. Very insightful. He also wrote a book about Peter Arno, a cartoonist for the New Yorker, primarily, I guess, in the 50s and 60s, maybe earlier 40s, actually.
Yeah.
And just want to mention that as well.
Well, and Michael Maslin was the first person first cartoonist that stumbled across our website, Cartoon Companion. And so we were thrilled that day that not only did he stumble across our site, but he featured it in Inkspill. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, that was our first shot of acknowledgement and acceptance. I got to tell you, Henry, he's a good guy because we kind of slagged his cartoon in our in our evaluation, and yet he was equanimity plus about it. He said, "Yeah, kind of interesting, and I don't totally disagree." And
Yeah,
it
right.
was fun. It was fun to actually, not that he would acknowledged it and was not perturbed at all, and even featured us in Inkspill.
Well, I think one
Okay.
thing that comes through over and over uh, with the observations, the guidelines, just the explaining of what it takes to do a New Yorker cartoon is that it's very difficult. And yet I don't think you'd ever want to reinvent the wheel, because I think there's been arguments every now and then that, well, let's just start from scratch. Let's just do something completely different. Well, I don't, why would you want to do that in some ways? I mean, you want to, a New Yorker cartoon is a New Yorker cartoon. You can't reinvent the wheels, is what I'm saying. What do you say?
I think one thing, I'll start off, Phil, and then Phil will bat cleanup here. But one of the things that we've said to each other over and over again is the hallmark in many ways of most of the New Yorker the cartoons is their humor is not what we call on the nose. It's not obvious slapstick style humor. It's got some depth to it, a little delay, a little off to the side humor. And that's the difference. And some of that is what people object to. They want the cartoon to just be straight on the nose. But Phil, that was one of our many discussions.
Yeah, and what we're talking about is subtext, and there is the literal reading of the cartoon, and then what is really the point of the cartoon, and what is the cartoonist really saying about society or politics or culture? And so if you understand the subtext, you can appreciate the cartoon better, as compared to a Sunday morning comics strip, which is kind of geared for everybody to understand.
Okay, well, it's been such a treat. Unless I'm missing something, I think I hope I've done justice to what you guys are doing here with funny stuff. Are there any final thoughts?
Well, first of all, we appreciate the fact, as you held up the book, that it is festooned with your little stickies, and that you've looked at it carefully. We really appreciate that. And Henry, you were very perceptive in the way that you have asked about the book of us. So we appreciate you taking the time and also being so kind about funny stuff.
Perfect.
And I want to say thank you again, Henry. And if you look on the back of the book, you'll see some very nice things that some famous cartoonists have said, like Raj Jast and Bob Mankoff and Dan Ferraro. And we're getting more nice things that cartoonists are saying to us as the book is being released. So thank you, Henry.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right, great.
Funny stuff.